Access databases are really good at collecting and storing large amounts of raw data. However, when it comes to understanding what all of that data is telling us, it can quickly get overwhelming. Most of the time, you'll want to summarize or aggregate data points together in order to get a better understanding of some of the trends or rankings that may be otherwise buried within all of that data. Let's take a closer look at how we can build a query using the wizard that will include some of these calculations. For this example, let's take a look at each state's contribution to our overall sales. To start this, I'll go to the Create tab, and we'll start a new query using the Query Wizard here. I'm going to choose the Simple Query Wizard and press OK. Now for this query, I need to first pull out our states information. So I'm going to go up here to this drop-down list, and from the table States, I'm going to pull in our state name. I'll press this single arrow button to move it over from Available to Selected Fields. I also need to get some information about our products. So I'm going to go over here and choose our products table. I'll scroll back up to there. And I need to get the prices that our customers paid for each of these products. We can find that in the Suggested Retail field. I'll go ahead and add that over to my query as well. Let's go ahead and press the next button. The next screen of the wizard asks us if I want to show the detail, or every field of every record, or a summary option. If I leave it on detail, what's going to happen is I'm just going to see the pricing for each order from every state. In other words, I'm just going to see the details of every order and the state that they came from. If I choose summary, what we can do is provide some calculations of all of the product prices across each state. Let's go into the summary options and explore that. Here I have the option of choosing various summary values for my suggested retail price. This is going to calculate or aggregate our values across each state. So for instance, for my suggested retail price, I can find the sum total across every state. I can also find the average price per state. I can find the minimum order that was placed in each state, and I can also find the maximum order that was placed in each state. I also have the option to count up the number of orders that occurred in every state. Let's go ahead and turn all of these checkboxes on so we can see the results. We'll go ahead and say OK, and that'll take us back here to this screen. Now I can go ahead and press Next. Now we get to name our query and save it into our navigation pane. I'm going to highlight this and call this Orders by State Summary. We have the option down here to either open the query to view the information, or we can modify the design. Let's go ahead and just leave it to view the information. That'll open up in Datasheet view, and press Finish. Now we can see that we have a row for each of our states. If I look down here at the bottom, I can see that I have 48 states represented. There are actually 2 states that don't have any orders, so we're not seeing them here in this table. But for each state, I can see their sum of suggested retail price, which is the grand total of every order that was placed within that state. I have the next column over here that says the average suggested retail price, which is the average of all orders placed in that state. I have the minimum suggested retail price here, which is the smallest order that was placed in each state. I also have the maximum order that was placed in each state, and I have a count of how many orders were placed in every state. I can sort on any one of these fields to see how the states compare to each other. For instance, on Count of Products, I'll go ahead and choose this arrow here and choose to sort largest to smallest. And I can see that the state of New York has by far the most number of products ordered within that state. I can see that it has 232 products ordered, whereas the state of Texas has 178 products. If I were to sort on another field, for instance, the max of suggested retail price, largest to smallest, you'll see all of these states here from Alaska up all have the highest priced product that was purchased in that state. I can also sort on other fields. For instance, if I sort on the sum of suggested retail price and sort smallest to largest, I'll see that Maine is the state with the fewest sales besides those 2 states that don't have any sales. So let's take a quick look in Design View and see how this query was constructed. I'm going to go ahead and go to the Home tab here, and we're going to change our view into Design View. I'm going to go ahead and close the property sheet if it's open, and we'll get rid of that off the screen. Now you can see that in the Query Wizard, we had only chosen to pull information from the States table here and the Products table over here. But Access actually already added the other tables that we needed in order to get the chain from States to Products. For instance, we needed the Customers table and the Orders table to translate all the way to Products. Let me go ahead and rearrange these tables a little bit so we can see these relationships a little clearer. Let's drag Products over here, and I'm going to make this one a little bit taller here so we can see the relationships. So we can see that in order to get from a state to a suggested retail price way over here, we need to follow the state that the customer was in, the customer placed an order, and the order was for a product. So Access automatically added the intermediate tables that it needed to get from one table to the other. Now down here on the bottom of the grid, we can also see that we have a new row that we haven't seen before. This row here is called the Totals row. We can see that we're grouping all of our states together, and then we're finding the sum, average, min, max of each of our prices. I also have this last column here that's calculating the count. This is using a counting function. If I expand this open a little bit, we can see that function. It's given an alias of count of products. There's the colon that tells me that's an alias. And then after that, we're using a counting function that's counting this asterisk character, which means it's counting everything. In the totals row, it's listed as an expression, which just means that it's going to be calculated before the query is run. So the wizard presents a straightforward interface for rapidly selecting several aggregate functions that we can apply to our query. But as with most things in Access, the wizard can only take you so far. We'll take a look at building our own aggregate queries using the design view in the next movie.